How we doing, everyone? How we doing? Today is Saturday, July the 29th, 2023. Just going live for our real estate note training. We are here every Saturday, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, just going through real estate notes and investing in notes. We go from like why you want to do it, how you should approach it, the process of evaluating deals, and we'll go all the way through the end on how you can close deals and how you actually buy notes. So we're just taking it from the beginning to the end of the process. We're breaking it down into smaller pieces. We're usually not here longer than 30 minutes or so, uh, and just breaking it down. We've gone through like why you want to invest in notes, why now is a good time, the different types of notes that there are, how you want to approach it. So we have four other trainings on the YouTube channel, Abundant Capital Group. You can go there and see the other four. This is number five. We're going to get into the due diligence when it comes to specific types of notes. So once you've said, hey, this is something that I'm interested in, and this is how I'm approaching it, this is how much money I have to invest, and I'm going to go after this type of note, and how should I approach looking at the deal? Or, and what we're doing is explaining how we go through this process as well. So if you're someone that doesn't necessarily want to do all of the work, this is the process that we go through to bring someone, a good note deal, something that we feel is a good note deal. And as we go through these steps, it'll kind of show you why, um, you'll know why this is a good deal based on these different steps that we take to evaluate transactions. So this week we're going to focus on performing notes. You have performing, you have non-performing, and then you have what is like a reperforming or a sub-performing. Reperforming kind of falls into the performing side. Sub-performing is kind of in between performing and non-performing. It could go non-performing at any time, but for right now, we call it sub-performing because the person, is making the payments. They may not make them on time. They may make up a payment, skip a month, make a payment. So at any time, it could fall into the non performing category, or, they could get back on track and consistently pay on time, and it would be in that performing category. And this is some of the stuff that we talked about in some of the other trainings. So you can always go there and look at it. So we're going to be focusing on performing notes. Like when we're looking at a performing note, what are the steps that we take to evaluate a good deal, and what we would want someone else to do if they're looking at it for themselves. So the first thing when it comes to the performing is the asset price. You have to see, is this like a bidding process? Some people or some companies that offer, or some individuals that offer notes for sale, they may have it as a bidding process where they show you the information, they give you the address, they tell you, I'm looking to sell, and basically make me an offer. So it's up to us to kind of go through the steps that we're going to go through to come up with a price. And then they'll consider what that price is. If it's something that, makes sense for them, they may take it. They could come back and counter and say, oh, I'm looking for X amount. Or they could just say, no, that's, not something that I'm looking for. So that would be like an open bidding process. You just don't know what they're looking for, but you make a bid based on the information, um, the public information and the information that they give you and supply you with to kind of look at. Another way that most companies do this is that they will have a certain price that they want for the note. They may say, we want 50,000 for this, we want 30,000, we want 100,000, and then it's just up to you, or us, to kind of see if it's worth that. Maybe we're getting a really good deal at the price that they're offering. Maybe we need to come in a little bit less, less because of this information that we're kind of going to go through, and gives us some reasons to say, well, it's really not worth that. It's worth maybe a little bit less. So it's more of a negotiation type of thing. um, so those are the two ways. You can either do a bid, or the price can be given to you and you just have to come in at what they're looking at, or negotiate a price. um, the next thing is property value. Property value, again, if you've seen some of the other training, or when you go back and watch it, especially I think it was last week's training, property value is what you want to be really confident knowing. Um, because once you know what this asset is worth right now today, you can make a good, strong bid on the property based on that. If you're not confident about it, or you don't feel good about what you think the value is, you can go out and order a BPO, and this is before you actually purchase the note. So this would be an expense that you would incur prior to winning a bid or making a bid. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that in the beginning. You can make that a part of the closing process. If you don't feel that good about it, then that before I actually send money for this transaction, I want to get a broker's price opinion on it. I want to feel more confident in the value. And during that process of maybe them accepting what you want, accepting the offer, you can put it contingent to BPO and other stipulations. This way, if the value isn't there, you can either renegotiate or say, I don't want to move forward because the value is not what I think it is. So it's very important um, to understand what the value is. Now, there's a lot of online resources that you can use if you feel comfortable, with that. The Zillows, the Realtor.coms, and the different websites out there can give you a certain idea of what the value is. But if you're not really confident in that, then you want to, make sure that if I do make an offer and it's accepted, that I want it to be subject to a broker's price opinion, which is a BPO, and making sure that that value is there. Because you can make you can make a mistake by overpaying for a note, and then that can cause you issues later on when we are trying to exit the deal, or what our exit strategies are, can be thrown off a lot and make a big difference between a good deal and a bad deal if we're not sure about the value. And you don't have to be down to the dollar on the value. I mean, as long as you're in a good enough range, maybe a $5,000, $10,000 range of what the price is, and you can base your offer on that, usually you'll be good in terms of what your exit strategies are, and making this a profitable uh, purchase for you. So the what that value is very important. So the next thing are the numbers, the relationship of the numbers, the investment to value, the investment to the unpaid balance. What is my yield? And how long has this note been in effect? Is it a new note? Is it been 12 months? Has it been 6 years that this person has owned it and been in this particular property? What are the neighborhood rents? Because you want to know that, because what is the likelihood of somebody possibly defaulting on this performing note and going and renting something? If you have something that is $1,000, $500 to $1,000 more than the average rent in the area, somebody could potentially walk away from this particular property and just go find a rental. And vice versa, if the rent is within $100, $200 of owning, a person may think twice about just giving up this property to go rent and be paying just about the same amount. So the relationship of all these numbers is what we want to know. We want to know what is the average rent in the neighborhood. How long has this been in effect? Is this a newly created note? It's been 3 months. The person might have been paying for those 3 months, but are you comfortable with that? Do you want a note that is, somebody's been paying on at least 12 months? Some people, want notes that are, the person's been in there and making payments for at least 2 years. But it all depends on you and, your risk tolerance and what you're willing, to accept. Typically, as long as someone has been in a property about 3 months, and has been paying, we feel like, that's a good track record. Anything can happen in the future. We don't know what's going to happen in a year from now, 9 months from now, 5 years from now. But if the person is paying, and a lot of the other factors, with that person in terms of their income, how long they've been at their job and things like that, can make you feel more secure, knowing that they've only been in there for 3 months, but they're in a good position. And like I said, are they more likely just to leave this property and go rent? If what they're paying me is what they're paying on the note is very similar to rent, then it's a pretty good chance that they're not going to walk away from it. So, the relationship between these numbers are what we really look at. We emphasize the investment to value. We want to be at a certain um, investment to value. A lot of times we want to be between like 70 to 72%, maybe on the maximum side 75% of value. That's getting a little bit more risky once you do 75. But again, there might be some other factors in there that make you feel like that's okay, depending on who's in there, their credit, how much money they're making each month, and different things like that. But we try to stay around the 70% mark because if there is any, downturn in the market, um, you know, right now, things have been, going up for a long time, but there's a chance that this market may take a turn and go back down. So what happens if there's a 10% drop in the area where you purchased a note, a 15% drop? If we're at 70% of value, we're still in a decent position. Should something go wrong with that particular property, we're still our investment to the value is still under what it's worth, so we can withstand about a 30% drop in an area. Now if there's a 40, 50%, 60% drop, that's not typical. That means that something major has happened in the market, and we'll just have to deal with that at the time. But very rarely do you anticipate such a significant fall in values. But we want to anticipate, if there's about a 30% reduction, we're still in a good position based on our investment to the value of this property. And then you have something what's called investment to the unpaid balance, the UPB. That means that a note may have $100,000 left on it to be paid, and you may be paying 90, 95 cents of that unpaid balance. But that's only because the property may be worth 170, 160,000. Uh, so if you're paying, 90 cents on the dollar, 95 cents on the dollar, around 90, 95,000, and there's a, $100,000 still to the unpaid balance, you're still in a good position based on the value of the property. So I wouldn't get caught up as, that, I'm paying, so close to the unpaid balance, because if it gets paid off, basically you're going to get your 90 or $95,000 back plus 5,000 or 10,000, just depending on, which one you buy it at. You still made everything back, and you made 10, 5 or $10,000 on top of it, because you could buy it today, and 30 days from now somebody could refinance and pay you out. But again, you still made back your money plus um, plus some. I mean, obviously we wanted to go a longer term, because if you keep it longer, then your return goes up based on the rate that the note was written at. So um, if you're close to, or if I wouldn't panic if I'm at 85, 90 cents on the dollar, 95 cents on the dollar of the unpaid balance. If my investment to the value is at 70%, I'm still good on that particular property. So some people do get caught up in that. They say, oh, I'm paying so close to what's left on it, that they want to stay away from that. But we wouldn't recommend that. We just want to make sure that if you are paying 90 cents on the dollar for the unpaid balance, that your investment to value is, obviously at that 70, maybe 72% range or less. Obviously, if you're paying less than that, then that's great. So, these numbers, have a relationship. And then also, lastly, the what is going to be your return? Your return is based on the interest that the note was written at. Some notes are written at 7%, 8%, 10, 12%. You'll see a range. As you get into the business and look at more deals. Right now, we've come at a time of record low interest rates. There may be people out there who are only writing 6 or 7% notes because, on the market, going to a bank, you could get 2 or 3 or 4%. So some people only go slightly above that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but that's a story for another conversation. They may have written it at 6 or 7%. So when you buy it at that reduced rate, that 70% of the value, you're gonna, that return for you is going to go up. It's going to be more than that 6 or 7% rate that it was written at, because you're paying less for it than what it was, written at. So it's going to go up, and that's why we like to discount no business, is because that interest rate based on the face value of it is, when you buy it, you're actually making more than that. So these are all things that you want to know when you're looking, at a note and potentially going to purchase it. And this again is part of that due diligence. So the numbers, kind of come up with what's going on, and then also with the numbers, you want to see what the story is, and the way that you start to see the story is by going through like the property title and looking at documentation. What has been going on with this particular property. You can see, and a lot of times it's online, how it has been transferred. There's been a family thing. It stayed in a family, and they just been transferring it between family members. Was this purchased from a bank as a REO? The person could be an investor fixing up the property, selling it with seller financing, and now looking to offload it. So these numbers will kind of will correlate with what the story is once we start looking deeper into these other things. So the property title, you want to see, a lot of times somebody who has a note, when they closed it, depending on how long ago that was, they may have a property title report. If you have one within the last 12 months, you can maybe go back to that particular company, have them refresh it. You just want to make sure that there's no liens or encumbrances or new liens or encumbrances that have come up on the property since this note owner has owned it. Has anything happened over time? And that's what that property title is going to tell you. If something new came up, how concerned do I need to be about something new? Is there any judgments? Is there any liens? There's really like only one type of lien that can supersede your first position note. And this is, again, we're speaking about being in first position here, and we'll get to what that is. But a lot of the other things, you don't really necessarily have to be concerned with, because they don't really jump your position. You're in first position, to get paid. Are these voluntary liens on the property or involuntary? The voluntary ones are like, when they create this first mortgage, and sometimes you'll see a second mortgage on a property. Those are voluntary liens. That we're liening the property because of, you're buying it, and these are the terms that were structured. Then you have involuntary. You have everything from federal or state taxes could be applied. And that's what you want to watch out for, is those types of liens that get placed on it, because those can, if those taxes are sold, they can jump your position. So you want to be, make sure that hasn't come up. And if it does come up, it doesn't mean that you have to right now go ahead and pay it, because, is it in like in a tax sale state? Is this going for a tax sale, or are they just behind on the taxes right now, or in and it's been applied as a lien on the property. Um, if it's going to tax sale, that's something that you got to be concerned with. You want to take care of that before it gets sold, because that will jump your first position lien. You have things like civil judgments, utilities. Sometimes when people um, they get tickets or for not keeping up on the property maintenance, things like that. Those are things that can be attached at any time to the property. So you just want to make sure and kind of make sure that this stuff is not there, and that's what a property title search will do for you. Is just kind of let you know, is there anything on here that I need to be concerned with. Um, so we talked about prior, and then we look at the docs. We look at the documents. We look at the note and either the deed of trust, or we look at the mortgage or whatever the security agreement is. We just make sure that that it's been transferred properly, and it's that we want to make sure that there's no gaps there. And if it is, it's not a major issue. You can kind of go back and make sure that it got passed down correctly. That's something that the note seller can do for you. If they don't want to do it, then you have to incur that cost, and you can again renegotiate the price of that note and say, okay, I'll go ahead and fix that, but I'm going to need you to bring this down X amount of dollars because of my expense. So there are some things when it comes to those documents, we want to make sure that they've been transferred properly. And you have the security agreement is a sign. That's how you transfer the security agreement. But when it comes to the note itself, that gets transferred. It's called an allonge. So you want to make sure that the allonges and the assignments are all correct. This could have been passed down 3, 4, 5, 10 times, even more than that. But a lot of times you see, maybe 3, 4 times that the property, has been passed over. It depends on how old the property is and how long somebody's been living in there. So if the property was built in 1920s, it could have transferred 10 times by now or more. And we just want to make sure that there's no gaps. And again, that should come up in your your title report, and going through the process, we can see that it was transferred properly. So we want to make sure that all that was done right. And then we want to make sure that the deed, depending on the type of note and the type of security agreement, sometimes they do what's called a land contract. And with the land contract, the note holder is usually on the deed and not the person that is paying on the note, because a contract for deed is where, until you have made all of your payments, the property is not deeded into your name until you satisfied all of those payments that you were supposed to make. So we want to make sure that, depending on the security agreement, that the deed is in the correct name and everything like that. So and then also we want to look at payment history. We want to get that information. We want to see, if it's somebody that's been living in it for 6 years, I mean, we don't have to look at the total 6 years of payments, but you probably want to go back at least 2, maybe 3 years at the most, just to make sure, we see the payments being made. And this is, again, on a performing note. If they've been performing for the last 2 years, you really don't have to go back to when they first purchased the house, but you want this no seller to show you proof that they have the money going into their account. Are they using a third party servicer who can print out what the payments that they've collected, when they've collected them and everything like that. So you want to make sure that this person can show you proof of payment. I mean, sometimes it could be just the person's bank account, especially when you deal with maybe mom and pop people that own maybe 1 or 2 notes. They may not go through a servicing company. They just may, they may be self-servicing it. And you just want to make sure that those payments, they have a record for them, that going into their account, the receipts or something like that, that this person is paying. You want proof of that. So then with the exit strategies, that's kind of like the last part of the due diligence is the exit strategies on the performing note. What am I thinking about here? So since the note is performing, we're just thinking that it's going to continue to perform. We're just going to collect the cash flow. Or what you can do is you can think about potentially selling a partial of this note. So let's say you put $25,000 in to buy this note, and there's X amount of payments left. You could potentially sell a certain portion of those payments to someone else for that same $25,000 that you bought the whole note for. So now you've gotten all your money back, but you still have an ownership interest in the remaining payments. Let's just say it was 100 payments, you sold 50 of them for that 25,000. You still are owed the remaining 50. So on the 51st payment, things will transfer back to you. You've collected all of your $25,000, and then now you're getting that monthly payment coming in again after the 51st payment. Or if the property sells, let's say it sells in payment 25, or they refinance it at payment 25 of the 50 that you sold. The person that purchased it, they're owed the rest of their 25 payments, and then you're owed whatever the unpaid balance is on those 50 payments that are still left. So you could, make a nice return, if that was to happen, and you are not in the deal for any money because you sold what you bought it for. So you could do that, or at a certain time you could think about just selling the whole note. Maybe you collect it for a year and then you can sell it. But on a performing note, there's not a whole lot that you're thinking about in terms of the exit strategy. You're just thinking that this person's going to continue to pay. Now, if they don't, we'll have to do some things at that particular time. But if they show the propensity to pay, you're buying it because you just want to get that cash flow and that return on your investment after all of these payments are made. So there's really, not a whole lot that you have to think about. You just have to be cognizant and stay on top of it, and make sure your servicer is staying on top of it and making sure that the payments are coming in. And then if they don't, then we have to do, some other things at that particular time. But you're not thinking about that on a performing note initially. So that's the training for this week in terms of going through the performing note and the proper due diligence on what we look at and everything like that. So, hopefully I did a good job explaining. It makes sense to you. But we look at all of these things, and we want to make sure that, that they're within certain ratios on the numbers and the value of the property and where we're coming in at, and making sure all the paperwork and everything is correct, prior to purchasing it or bringing it to you as a good investment, for you and for your money. So those are the steps that we take on the performing side. Next week, we'll talk about the non-performing side. There's some things that you don't do, and then there's some other things in terms of the exit strategies that you start to think about and plan out when it comes to the non-performing side of it. So we'll take on that next week. Hopefully you can join me. If you're watching the replay, you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me, 973-475-8488, or you can email me at investorgmr@yahoo.com. You can email me any questions or concerns that you have, or you can make a comment on the video here, and we'll definitely try to get that answered and get in touch with you and make sure we cover that for you. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll be back next week, next Saturday, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, with training number 6 on the proper due diligence for non-performing notes. Have a good one.